She never imagined her senior art exhibition at Shadowmere Academy would expose a deadly international weapons ring. But when 3 members of the notorious Crimson Tide cartel decided to terrorize the girl in the wheelchair, they had no idea they were messing with the daughter of America's most decorated Navy SEAL commander. Their mistake would unravel a criminal empire and reveal that sometimes the most dangerous person in the room isn't who you'd expect. Before we continue with this thrilling story, hit that subscribe button because tomorrow we're bringing you an incredible tale of how a blind surfer saved an entire coastal town from disaster. Now, back to our story. The marble halls of Shadowmere Academy echoed with whispers as Zara Aethris wheeled herself toward the student gallery. Her charcoal-stained fingers gripped the wheels with practiced precision, each movement calculated and smooth. The prestigious private school, perched on the edge of Ravencliff Harbor, had been her sanctuary and battlefield for the past 2 years. Tonight's senior art showcase should have been her moment of triumph, the piece she'd spent months creating, a haunting seascape that seemed to capture the very soul of the main coastline, hung center stage. But Zara could feel Thorn Marivaux's predatory gaze following her from across the room. Well, if it isn't our resident wheel-bound wannabe artist, Thorn's voice carried across the gallery, deliberately loud enough for everyone to hear. His designer shoes clicked against the polished floor as he approached, flanked by his usual entourage. Daddy's money bought you wall space, but it can't buy you talent. Zara kept her expression neutral, years of practice making it look effortless. If only they knew that her father, Commander Kestrel Aethris, had taught her more than just patience. The wheelchair wasn't a weakness, it was camouflage. The exhibition speaks for itself, Thorn, she replied quietly, adjusting her position to maintain clear sightlines to all exits, a habit her father had drilled into her since childhood. The gallery's security cameras were in her peripheral vision, their subtle movements tracking the growing crowd. What Thorn and his followers didn't know was that Storm's Edge Manor, the clifftop estate where Zara lived with her father, wasn't just a home. It was a training ground. Every room had been modified not just for her mobility, but for combat scenarios. The pool where she strengthened her upper body wasn't just for physical therapy. It was where she learned underwater tactical maneuvers. The art studio where she painted wasn't just for creativity. It was where she learned to read people, to notice details others missed. As if summoned by her thoughts, Mr. Lysander Calix appeared at the gallery entrance. The school counselor's presence usually deterred the worst of Thorn's behavior, but tonight something was different. Calix's normally calm demeanor seemed strained, his eyes darting between Zara and 3 men who had just entered the gallery. They didn't look like typical art enthusiasts. Their expensive suits couldn't quite hide the predatory way they moved, the subtle bulges of concealed weapons at their sides. Zara's pulse quickened as her trained eye caught the small tattoo visible on one man's wrist. A crimson wave, the mark of the Crimson Tide cartel. Her father had briefed her about them just last week. They were escalating operations along the East Coast using private schools and art galleries as fronts for their weapons trafficking. But why here? Why tonight? Thorn was still talking, making snide comments about her work, but Zara's focus had shifted. The 3 men were moving through the crowd with purpose, their pattern suggesting they were securing the space. One positioned himself near the emergency exit, another by the main entrance, while the third began photographing seemingly random pieces of artwork, including hers. That's when she saw it. Hidden in the depths of her seascape painting, encoded in the waves and shadows, was something she hadn't put there. Someone had altered her work, embedding what looked like coordinates or a code. Her art exhibition hadn't been chosen for its merit. It had been chosen because it was the perfect cover for something much darker. Zara's hand moved to the hidden compartment in her wheelchair, where her father insisted she keep an encrypted phone. She needed to warn him, but any sudden movement would draw attention. The cartel members were watching everyone, their casual poses belying their lethal training. "Hey, cripple, I'm talking to you." Thorn grabbed her chair's handle, spinning her to face him. The sudden movement gave her the perfect excuse to drop her sketchbook, papers scattering across the floor. As she bent to retrieve them, she pressed the phone's emergency signal. 3 quick pulses that would alert her father without drawing attention. What happened next would transform her quiet art exhibition into the opening move of a deadly game. The cartel members had no idea they'd just walked into a trap 3 years in the making, or that the seemingly helpless girl in the wheelchair was about to become their worst nightmare. The sun was setting over Ravencliff Harbor, painting the gallery windows in shades of blood red. In 20 minutes, the exhibition would officially open to the public. In 30, the first shots would be fired. And by midnight, the Crimson Tide cartel would learn a painful lesson about judging people by their appearances. Commander Zara Aethris stood in his hidden command center beneath Storm's Edge Manor, watching multiple screens displaying the Shadowmere Academy gallery from various angles. His daughter's emergency signal had triggered an immediate response, but years of special operations had taught him the value of patience. Moving too quickly could put Zara at risk. The commander's weathered face remained impassive as he studied the cartel members through the surveillance feeds. His hands, scarred from countless missions, moved across a holographic interface, identifying and tracking each target. But his mind was elsewhere, remembering the day that had changed everything. 3 years ago, Zara had been a promising young gymnast, training for the Junior Olympics. Then came the accident, or what everyone thought was an accident. The semi-truck that had run their car off the road had disappeared without a trace. The impact had severed Zara's spine, but it had also awakened something in Kestrel. He'd recognized the tactical precision of the attack, how it had been designed to look random while targeting exactly the right point of impact. Someone had wanted his daughter in that wheelchair. Someone had known he was getting close to uncovering something big. "Sir," his communications officer's voice broke through the memory. Facial recognition confirmed. The 3 subjects are high-ranking members of the Crimson Tide's East Coast operation. But there's more. The officer's voice held a note of concern. "We've identified the gallery owner, Vincent Blackbriar. He's not who he claims to be." Kestrel's eyes narrowed as a file appeared on his screen. Vincent Blackbriar was actually Marcus Voss, a former CIA operative who'd gone dark 3 years ago, right around the time of Zara's accident. "Play the last transmission from Zara's monitoring devices," Kestrel ordered. Each piece of her wheelchair had been carefully modified, transforming it into a mobile surveillance platform. The audio was crystal clear, picking up conversations throughout the gallery. "The painting is perfect," one of the cartel members was saying. "The coordinates are embedded exactly as specified, once the buyers arrive." "Sir," another officer interrupted, "we're picking up unusual traffic patterns around the academy. Multiple vehicles with diplomatic plates are converging on the location." Kestrel's jaw tightened. This wasn't just a weapons deal, it was an auction. The gallery exhibition was cover for something much bigger, and his daughter was at the center of it all. But what none of them knew was that Zara was far from helpless. After the accident, Kestrel had transformed their home into more than just a rehabilitation center. Every therapy session had doubled as combat training. While doctors focused on what she'd lost, Kestrel had taught her to weaponize her new reality. The wheelchair wasn't just medical equipment. It was a custom-built tactical platform. Carbon fiber frame reinforced to military specifications. Wheels balanced for silent movement. Hidden compartments containing everything from surveillance gear to defensive weapons. More importantly, Zara had learned to use her changed center of gravity as an advantage in combat situations. "Commander," his tactical officer called out, "we've got movement at the Academy's north entrance. Mr. Lysander Calix is acting strangely. He appears to be coordinating with someone outside the building." Kestrel focused on the counselor's image. Something about his movement pattern seemed familiar. Too familiar. He'd seen that tactical awareness before, in operators trained for deep cover assignments. "Run a full background check on Calix," he ordered. "Cross-reference with all known CIA deep cover operations from the past decade." The results confirmed his suspicion. Lysander Calix had been part of the same CIA unit as Marcus Voss. This wasn't coincidence. It was a convergence of carefully laid plans, all centering on tonight's exhibition. But why Zara's painting? Why use his daughter's art as the centerpiece of their operation? The answer hit him just as new alerts began flooding his screens. Multiple security breaches at naval bases along the East Coast, each one synchronized with tonight's exhibition. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. This wasn't just about weapons trafficking. Someone was using the art show as a distraction for something much bigger. "Sir," his communications officer's voice was urgent now. "We've got another problem. The school's security system just registered 3 more Crimson Tide members entering through the service entrance. They're carrying specialized equipment." Kestrel watched as the new arrivals moved with military precision through the building's service corridors. Their equipment cases bore the markings of demolition gear. This wasn't just an auction, it was potentially a trap. The gallery's lights dimmed slightly as Zara noticed the first visitors arriving for the exhibition. Among them, she recognized several foreign diplomats, faces she'd studied in her father's briefings. Their presence confirmed her suspicions about the real purpose of tonight's event. Thorn Mariveau was still hovering nearby, his usual smirk replaced by something more calculating. "You know," he said, moving closer to her wheelchair, "my father mentioned your painting specifically. Said it was important." His tone suggested he knew more than he was letting on. Zara's mind raced. Thorn's father, she recalled, was a defense contractor with connections to several Eastern European countries. Another piece of the puzzle clicked into place. The wheelchair's hidden sensors detected increased electromagnetic activity. Someone was using high-grade communications equipment nearby. "The painting's not for sale, Thorn," she replied, carefully maneuvering her chair to maintain sightlines on the 3 Crimson Tide members. They had spread out strategically, creating a triangle formation that covered all major exits. "Everything's for sale," Thorn sneered, reaching for her painting. "My father always gets what he wants." In that moment, Zara saw something that changed everything. As Thorn's sleeve rode up, she caught a glimpse of a familiar tattoo. Not the Crimson Tide's wave, but something more disturbing. It was a small mark she'd seen in her father's classified files. The symbol of the Shadow Protocol, a rogue military division thought to have been dismantled years ago. The pieces were starting to align. Thorn wasn't just a spoiled bully. He was a planted operative. His years of tormenting her hadn't been random teenage cruelty. It had been surveillance, testing her responses, probing for weaknesses. Mr. Calix approached, his expression tense. "Zara, your piece is drawing quite a lot of attention." He gestured to a group of men in expensive suits examining her painting with obvious interest. "Perhaps you'd like to discuss your artistic process with our guests?" The hidden warning in his voice was clear. These weren't just art enthusiasts, they were buyers. But what exactly were they buying? The coordinates hidden in her painting were only part of the equation. That's when she noticed something else. The gallery's new security system, installed just last month, wasn't just monitoring the room. The cameras were creating a precise 3-dimensional map of the space. Combined with the electromagnetic signatures she was detecting, it painted a disturbing picture. They weren't just using her art exhibition as a cover for a weapons deal. They were using it to map Shadowmere Academy's entire infrastructure. The school sat atop a network of Cold War-era tunnels, many of which connected to modern military installations along the coast. "Actually," Zara replied carefully, "I'd love to give everyone a proper tour of my work. The perspective is quite unique from my level." She wheeled herself toward her painting, knowing that every movement was being watched. The hidden compartment in her chair contained more than just an emergency phone. Her father had equipped her with cutting-edge surveillance technology, including a quantum scanner capable of detecting subsonic frequencies. As she moved closer to her painting, the scanner picked up something alarming. The frame wasn't just hiding coordinates, it contained a sophisticated resonance device. If activated, it could map every tunnel and cavity beneath the academy with military-grade precision. Her art wasn't just marking a location, it was part of a sophisticated scanning system. "Fascinating technique," one of the suited men commented, his Eastern European accent thick. "The way you've layered the waves, creating depth." It's almost like looking into another world. You have no idea, Zara responded, activating her chair's signal scrambler. The quantum scanner had detected a transmission frequency. Someone was already trying to activate the device. Before anyone could react, the gallery lights flickered again. This time it wasn't subtle. The power surged, causing several guests to murmur in concern. Zara knew what it meant. Her father had received her signal and was making his first move. "Ladies and gentlemen," Vincent Blackbriar's voice cut through the growing tension, "please remain calm. We're experiencing some minor technical difficulties. If everyone could move toward the center of the gallery." He was trying to contain the crowd, Zara realized, but not for their safety. The center of the room would provide the clearest scan of the tunnel system below. They were about to activate every resonance device simultaneously. Thorn grabbed her chair again, this time with clear purpose. "You're not going anywhere," he whispered, his facade of schoolyard bully completely gone. "We've spent too long setting this up." "You really should have done better research," Zara replied quietly, her hand moving to a concealed control on her chair. "Did you really think my father would let me attend this school unprotected?" The next few seconds would change everything. As the lights flickered one final time, Zara Aethris was about to show everyone exactly why you should never underestimate a girl in a wheelchair, especially one trained by a Navy SEAL. The moment Thorn's hand tightened on her wheelchair, Zara activated the chair's defensive systems. A subtle electrical pulse, not enough to cause permanent damage but sufficient to disrupt muscle control, shot through the handles. Thorn's grip instantly loosened, his smug expression replaced by shock. "What the?" He stumbled backward, drawing attention from nearby guests. The 3 Crimson Tide members tensed, their hands moving subtly toward concealed weapons. "Problem, Thorn?" Zara asked innocently, her voice carrying just enough to be heard by surrounding patrons. "You seem a bit shaky." Years of training had taught her the value of maintaining cover, even in critical moments. To everyone else, it would appear that Thorn had simply lost his balance. Vincent Blackbriar, or Marcus Voss as Zara now knew him, moved through the crowd with practiced ease. "Mr. Marivaux, perhaps you should step outside for some air." His words were polite, but his eyes held a warning. They couldn't risk drawing attention, not when their operation was so close to completion. The gallery's power continued to fluctuate, but Zara knew it wasn't just her father's doing. The resonance devices hidden in the artwork were drawing massive amounts of energy, preparing for something bigger than just mapping tunnels. Through her chair's specialized sensors, she detected new signals. The quantum scanner revealed a complex network of devices throughout the gallery, far more sophisticated than simple mapping tools. They were building something, using the gallery's power grid and the hidden tech in the artwork to construct a temporary quantum network. "Ladies and gentlemen," Blackbriar addressed the crowd, "due to the technical difficulties, we'll be moving the exhibition to our secondary gallery space downstairs." His smile was perfect, practiced. "Please, follow our staff." Zara's blood ran cold. The secondary gallery was directly above the main tunnel junction. If they activated their network there, they wouldn't just be mapping the tunnels, they'd have access to every military communication system along the eastern seaboard. She needed to act, but the gallery was now full of civilians. Any obvious move would put them at risk. That's when she noticed Mr. Calix making a subtle hand signal, one she recognized from her father's training. He wasn't just CIA, he was part of her father's unit. "My chair's battery seems to be acting up," Zara announced loudly, adding a note of embarrassment to her voice. "Mr. Calix, could you help me with the backup system? It's in the storage room." Thorn, still shaking off the effects of the electrical pulse, moved to intercept. "I'll help her," he said through gritted teeth. But one of the Crimson Tide members placed a restraining hand on his shoulder. "Let the counselor handle it," the man said quietly. "We need you in position downstairs." As Calix wheeled her toward the storage room, Zara activated her chair's secure communication system. The quantum scanner had picked up something else, a signature she'd been trained to recognize. Someone was preparing to breach the Academy's perimeter. "They're using my painting as more than a map reference," she whispered to Calix once they were alone. The wavelength patterns, they're an encryption key. Every piece in this exhibition is part of a quantum computing array. Calix nodded grimly. Your father's already figured that out, but there's more. The Shadow Protocol isn't just after military communications, they're... An explosion cut him off, distant but powerful enough to shake the building. That wasn't part of the plan, Calix muttered, his hand moving to a concealed weapon. No, Zara agreed, reaching beneath her chair to release its combat modifications. The wheels locked into a more stable configuration as armored panels slid into place. That was a counterattack. Someone else is making their move. Through the storage room window, they could see multiple black vehicles approaching the academy, but they weren't military or law enforcement. These were private security forces. Someone else had discovered the Shadow Protocol's plan. How many players are in this game? Calix wondered aloud. Enough to make it interesting, Zara replied, accessing her chair's tactical display. The quantum scanner was picking up multiple heat signatures converging on the building. But they all made the same mistake. What's that? They thought the girl in the wheelchair was just part of their cover story. Zara's voice held a hint of steel as she activated her chair's full combat systems. Time to show them why that was a bad assumption. As if in response, the Academy's power grid surged one final time. In the gallery above, guests were being herded toward the secondary space, unaware they were pawns in multiple overlapping operations. Through her tactical display, Zara could see Thorn and the Crimson Tide members taking up strategic positions. They thought they were in control of the situation. They thought the real action would begin once everyone was in the secondary gallery. They had no idea that every move they'd made had been anticipated, analyzed, and countered. Commander Zara Aethris watched the tactical display with growing concern as multiple heat signatures converged on Shadowmere Academy. The newcomers weren't just private security. Their movement patterns suggested military training, but not American military. Sir, his communications officer reported, we've identified the new players, Axiom Private Military Corporation. They're supposedly contracted by several Eastern European governments, but our intelligence suggests they're actually funded by the Shadow Protocol, Kestrel finished. They're not here to stop the operation. They're here to make sure it succeeds. His scarred hands moved across the holographic interface, highlighting key positions around the academy. Show me thermal imaging of the tunnel system. The display shifted, revealing a network of underground passages glowing with activity. Someone had already accessed the old tunnel network, setting up equipment at key junctions. But there was something else, a heat signature that shouldn't have been there deep in the oldest section of tunnels. Cross-reference that anomaly with the Academy's original blueprints, Kestrel ordered. The computer overlaid historical data onto the thermal image, revealing something that made his blood run cold. The tunnels didn't just connect to military installations. They led directly to an abandoned Cold War-era command center. Sir, we're picking up quantum encryption signatures from the gallery. They're not just building a network, they're trying to reactivate the old command center's systems. Kestrel's mind raced. The Shadow Protocol hadn't chosen Shadowmere Academy by chance. They weren't just after current military communications. They were trying to access a forgotten weapons system, one that had been sealed away decades ago. Get me a secure line to Zara, he commanded. But before the connection could be established, new alarms blared through the command center. Multiple breaches detected at naval bases along the coast, his tactical officer reported. They're using our own communications protocols. Somehow they've already accessed. It's not them, Kestrel interrupted, his eyes fixed on a particular data pattern. Those breaches are coming from inside our own system. Someone's been waiting for this moment. He pulled up personnel files, focusing on recent transfers within naval intelligence. Show me everything we have on Cyrus Valdarian. The name had been nagging at him ever since the operation began. Valdarian had appeared in naval intelligence 6 months ago, his credentials impeccable, his rise through the ranks meteoric. But something about his background had always felt wrong. The files confirmed his suspicion. Cyrus Valdarian wasn't just part of the Shadow Protocol. He was its architect. He'd spent years placing operatives throughout the military establishment, waiting for the perfect moment to activate them all. "Sir," his surveillance officer called out, "you need to see this." The main screen showed new footage from the gallery. The quantum scanning devices weren't just mapping the tunnels, they were generating a complex interference pattern, one that was slowly disrupting every security system in a 10-mile radius. But what caught Kestrel's attention was something else. In the corner of the frame, nearly hidden by the crowd, he spotted a face he hadn't seen in 3 years. The truck driver who had run them off the road, the one who had put Zara in the wheelchair. It was never about weapons trafficking, Kestrel realized. The Crimson Tide, the art exhibition, even the tunnel mapping, they're all diversions. They wanted us focused on stopping a weapons deal while they activated something much worse. His tactical display lit up with new alerts. Military bases up and down the coast were reporting system anomalies. The quantum network wasn't just breaching communications, it was accessing old Soviet-era failsafe protocols, ones that had been buried in the system for decades. "Get me Secretary Pierce," Kestrel ordered, reaching for a secure phone. But the line was dead. Every communication channel, even the supposedly unhackable quantum-encrypted ones, had gone dark. In that moment, Commander Zara Aethris understood the true scope of what they were facing. This wasn't just about stealing military secrets or selling weapons. The Shadow Protocol was attempting something unprecedented. They were trying to seize control of every automated defense system on the eastern seaboard, and they were using his daughter's art exhibition as ground zero. In the storage room, Zara's tactical display lit up with multiple warnings. The quantum scanner had detected a massive power surge building beneath the academy. Someone was activating the old command center's systems. "We've got incoming," Lysander Calix reported, his back against the door. "Axiom PMC forces, at least 12 operators. They're setting up a perimeter." "Good," Zara replied, surprising him. Her fingers moved across her chair's hidden control panel, bringing up detailed schematics of the academy. "Let them think they're containing us. They haven't figured out what this room really is." The storage room's mundane appearance concealed its true purpose. Decades ago, during the Cold War, it had been a secondary access point to the underground command center. The storage shelves were actually disguised server banks, still connected to the original system. "Your father planned this," Calix realized, watching as Zara's wheelchair interfaced with the hidden technology. "He knew they'd choose your art exhibition. The whole thing was a trap." "Not exactly," Zara corrected, her fingers flying across the controls. "We knew they'd make a move eventually, but they chose the timing and location. What they didn't know was that every piece of art in this exhibition was designed to counter their quantum network." Through the storage room window, they could see Thorne directing Axiom operators into position. The gallery guests were being herded into the secondary space, exactly as planned. But something about their movements caught Zara's attention. "They're not just securing the building," she observed. "Look at their formation. They're creating a resonance pattern." Calix moved to get a better view. "The operators themselves are part of the quantum array. Their positions." His eyes widened. "They're not just trying to access the old command center. They're trying to amplify its capabilities." Zara's display showed the energy buildup reaching critical levels. If the Shadow Protocol succeeded in activating the old Soviet systems with their quantum amplification network, they wouldn't just control modern military communications. They'd have access to forgotten weapons protocols that could devastate the entire East Coast. "Time to show them why you don't underestimate a girl who grew up studying quantum mechanics," Zara said, activating her chair's full combat configuration. The seemingly ordinary wheelchair transformed, revealing its true nature as a mobile tactical platform. Armored panels slid into place as the wheel configuration shifted for maximum stability. Hidden compartments opened, revealing specialized equipment that her father had designed specifically for this moment. But the chair's most important feature wasn't its weapons, it was its quantum interference capabilities. "The art exhibition was never about the paintings themselves," Zara explained as she initiated her countermeasures. Each piece was created with specialized pigments containing quantum-entangled particles. When they activate their network, it'll create a feedback loop, Calix finished, finally understanding. "Your art isn't just hiding coordinates, it's a quantum virus delivery system." A massive power surge rocked the building as the Shadow Protocol began their activation sequence. In the gallery above, their quantum network hummed to life, creating complex interference patterns designed to breach military systems. But they had no idea that every painting, every sculpture, every piece of art they'd so carefully arranged was about to turn their own technology against them. "Signal the teams," Zara commanded, her voice steady as she prepared for what came next. "Tell my father we're initiating Phase 2. Calyx raised an eyebrow. "There's a Phase 2? Zara's smile held a hint of steel. They thought they were clever, using an art exhibition as cover. But art isn't just about what you see. It's about what you feel." Her hands moved to her chair's primary controls. Time to give them a real demonstration of quantum entanglement. The storage room's hidden systems activated, connecting with her wheelchair's advanced technology. On her tactical display, Zara could see the enemy's quantum network spreading like a web throughout the building. But underneath that web, another pattern was emerging, one that had been there all along, waiting to be awakened. The moment the Shadow Protocol activated their quantum network, every painting in the gallery began to resonate at a specific frequency. The specialized pigments Zara had used in her artwork contained nanoscale quantum processors, each one programmed to respond to this exact moment. "System breach in progress," Vincent Blackbriar's voice echoed through the gallery's speakers, sounding triumphant. "Quantum network stabilizing. Beginning access sequence to coastal defense networks." But something was wrong. The quantum interference patterns weren't behaving as expected. Instead of creating a coherent network, the signals were fragmenting, splitting into countless smaller patterns that seemed to dance through the air like invisible lightning. "What's happening?" Thorne demanded, watching as his tactical display showed cascading system failures. "The network should be stable by now." In the storage room, Zara's wheelchair had fully transformed into its combat configuration. The quantum scanner showed her exactly what was happening. Her father's plan was working perfectly. "You see, Thorne," she spoke into her chair's communication system, knowing her voice would carry through the gallery's speakers. "Quantum entanglement is a fascinating phenomenon. When particles are entangled, what affects one instantly affects the other, no matter the distance between them." The gallery's lights pulsed with strange patterns as her words echoed through the space. The Axiom operators raised their weapons, trying to locate the source of her voice. "But what happens when you create a quantum network where every node is entangled with every other node?" Zara continued, her fingers dancing across her controls. "And what happens when those nodes are programmed to create deliberate interference patterns?" Cyrus Valdarian himself stormed into the gallery, his expensive suit contrasting sharply with his military bearing. "Find her! Shut down her access now!" But it was too late. The quantum processors hidden in Zara's artwork weren't just interfering with the Shadow Protocol's network. They were rewriting it from within. Each painting, each sculpture, had become a node in a vastly more complex system than anything they had anticipated. 3 years, Zara's voice resonated through the gallery. 3 years you watched me paint thinking my art was just a cover. 3 years you thought the wheelchair made me vulnerable, made me the perfect pawn in your game. The quantum network's energy began to pulse visibly now, creating aurora-like patterns in the air. The Axiom operators' tactical systems started failing as the interference spread. "But you never asked the right questions," Zara continued. "You never wondered why a disabled girl would spend so much time studying quantum mechanics. You never questioned why a Navy SEAL's daughter would choose art as her medium." In the storage room, Calyx watched in amazement as Zara's wheelchair interfaced with the hidden server banks. The old Cold War systems were coming online, but not under the Shadow Protocol's control. Each brushstroke, Zara explained, her voice carrying a hint of satisfaction. Each layer of paint contained precisely calibrated quantum processors. When you activated your network, you didn't just connect to the old command center. You connected every piece of my art to every military system you were trying to breach. Valdarian's face contorted with rage as he realized the truth. The girl, she's not just his daughter. She's the quantum prodigy the CIA tried to recruit 3 years ago. "Before the accident," Thorne added, finally understanding. before we arranged the crash that put her in that chair. That's where you made your final mistake. Zara's voice had turned cold. You thought the wheelchair would limit me. Instead, it gave me exactly what I needed, a mobile quantum computing platform disguised as medical equipment. Her tactical display showed the cascade effect spreading through their network. Every system they'd tried to breach was now being isolated, protected by quantum interference patterns that no conventional technology could overcome. Sir, one of the Axiom operators called out, we're losing control of the network, the interference. It's not just blocking us, it's spreading back through our own systems. Cyrus Valderian hadn't become the architect of the Shadow Protocol by being predictable. As his quantum network collapsed around him, he reached into his jacket and pulled out what looked like an ordinary phone. If we can't have the defense networks, he announced, his voice carrying across the chaos of the gallery, then no one will. His thumb pressed a specific sequence on the device. Instantly, every quantum processor in the building began to overload. The specialized pigments in Zara's paintings started to glow with an eerie blue light as the energy buildup reached dangerous levels. You're insane. Thorne backed away from his former commander. That's a quantum cascade initiator. You'll collapse the entire network, along with every military communication system connected to it. Valderian smiled coldly. Sometimes you have to burn everything down to build something new. In the storage room, Zara's displays were flashing urgent warnings. The quantum cascade was building exponentially, threatening to create a chain reaction that would devastate electronic systems along the entire coast. He's trying to force a quantum singularity, she explained to Calix, her fingers moving frantically across her controls. If those processors overload simultaneously, how long? 3 minutes, maybe less. Zara's mind raced. The quantum entanglement that made her counterattack so effective now worked against her. Every processor in every painting was connected, making the cascade almost impossible to stop. Almost. Get the civilians out, she ordered, already implementing her contingency plan. Use the service tunnels. They're shielded against quantum interference. As Calix moved to evacuate the guests, Zara initiated her wheelchair's most advanced protocols. The chair wasn't just equipped with quantum computing capabilities, it was designed to channel and redirect quantum energy. Your father will kill me for letting you do this. Calix hesitated at the door. My father knew this was always a possibility, Zara replied, her voice steady as she began routing power through her chair's systems. Why do you think he spent 3 years teaching me to fight without it? Above them, the gallery had descended into chaos. The Axiom operators were retreating, their equipment rendered useless by the growing quantum disturbance. Valderian stood in the center of it all, watching his destruction unfold with an almost religious fervor. You see? He called out, knowing Zara could hear him. This is true evolution. From the ashes of the old system, something new will emerge, something stronger. You're right about one thing, Zara's voice carried through the gallery speakers one last time. Evolution isn't about preserving the old, it's about adapting to survive. With those words, she activated her chair's quantum absorption protocols. The specialized systems her father had designed began drawing in the cascade energy, channeling it through carefully shielded circuits. The pain was immediate and intense. Even with the chair's protective systems, handling this much quantum energy was like trying to contain lightning with her bare hands. But Zara had spent 3 years learning to push through pain, to turn agony into advantage. What is she doing? Thorne demanded, watching as the blue glow began to fade from the paintings drawn inexorably toward the storage room. She's using the chair as a quantum sink, Valderian realized, his triumph turning to ash in his mouth. Redirecting the cascade into a number that's impossible. The energy requirements would be exactly what you'd need to reactivate the old command center's original purpose, Zara finished through gritted teeth. Her tactical display showed the energy flow reaching critical levels. In 30 seconds, the quantum cascade would either be contained or it would destroy everything in a 100-mile radius. The chair's systems were failing. Warning lights flashed across her display as circuits overloaded and protective shielding began to crack. But Zara didn't need the chair's systems anymore. She just needed them to last long enough. The storage room crackled with quantum energy as Zara's wheelchair channeled the cascade through its failing systems. Warning klaxons echoed through the building as the old command center's systems began powering up, drawing the destructive energy down into its decades-old circuits. "You don't understand what you're doing," Valdarian shouted, his composure finally cracking. "That facility was sealed for a reason. The quantum mainframe down there. It wasn't just designed to control defense systems, it was designed to control everything." Through the haze of pain, Zara smiled. "You think I don't know that? Why do you think we chose this school? Why do you think my father spent 3 years preparing for this moment?" Her tactical display showed the energy flow reaching critical mass. The quantum cascade was being redirected, but not into the old Soviet weapons systems, as Valdarian had feared. Instead, it was flowing into something much older, much more powerful. "The quantum mainframe wasn't a weapons control system," Zara explained, her voice strained but triumphant. "It was designed to be a quantum firewall, the world's first and most powerful defense against exactly the kind of attack you just tried to launch." Thorn burst into the storage room, weapon raised, but froze at what he saw. Zara's wheelchair had transformed into something that defied conventional understanding, quantum energy coursing through its structure like living lightning. "All these years," she continued, looking directly at him, "you thought you were watching me, monitoring the poor disabled girl, making sure she didn't interfere with your plans. But my father and I, we were watching you. Every bully, every taunt, every accident, it all helped us perfect the quantum interface." The chair's systems were reaching their limits. Circuitry melted and protective shielding cracked as more energy poured through. But Zara didn't need them to last much longer. The quantum mainframe was almost active. "Your father," Valdarian's voice held a note of dawning comprehension. "He wasn't just assigned to protect the old facility. He was part of the original quantum defense project. The accident that put me in this chair?" Zara's hands moved across controls that were literally melting beneath her fingers. "It didn't just change my life. It gave me direct neural compatibility with quantum systems. Why do you think you could never fully breach military networks? I've been interfacing with them directly for 3 years." Alarms blared throughout the academy as the quantum mainframe powered up fully for the first time in decades. But instead of accessing weapons systems or defense networks, it began establishing quantum encrypted firewalls throughout every military installation on the coast. "It's over, Valdarian," Zara announced, as her tactical display showed military and law enforcement units converging on the academy. "The quantum cascade you triggered? It didn't just power up the old systems. It let us identify and isolate every sleeper agent, every compromised network, every backdoor the Shadow Protocol tried to install." Thorn lowered his weapon, his face a mask of confusion. "All this time, the bullying, the harassment, helped us maintain our cover while we mapped your entire operation," she finished. "Every time you thought you were proving my weakness, you were actually helping us strengthen our defenses. Just as victory seemed within reach, everything went wrong. The quantum mainframe's power signature suddenly changed, its energy patterns shifting in ways Zara's systems couldn't predict." "Did you really think," Valdarian laughed, holding up a second device, "that we wouldn't have a contingency plan? That old Soviet system has more than one master protocol." The quantum energy flowing through Zara's chair suddenly reversed direction. Instead of channeling into the mainframe's defensive systems, it began feeding back into the Shadow Protocol's network. "The thing about quantum entanglement," Valdarian explained, watching as Zara struggled to maintain control, "is that it works both ways. Your father's quantum firewall? We've been studying it for decades. Every defense he built, we learned to corrupt." Through her failing displays, Zara watched in horror as red warning lights cascaded across military installations along the coast. The quantum feedback wasn't just overloading her systems, it was creating backdoors into every network connected to the mainframe. "Your father made one crucial mistake," Valdarian continued, approaching the storage room. "He assumed the accident that gave you quantum compatibility was random. that we couldn't possibly have planned it that precisely. The pain was becoming unbearable as quantum energy surged through her chair's systems. Zara could feel every circuit burning out, every protection failing. But worse than the physical agony was the realization that they had played into the Shadow Protocol's hands. You see, we needed someone with direct neural compatibility, Valdarian explained. Someone young enough that their brain could adapt to quantum interfaces. Someone with the right genetic markers. Someone whose father had access to the original quantum defense protocols. Thorn moved to Valdarian's side, his earlier confusion replaced by cold understanding. The bullying, the harassment, it wasn't just surveillance, we were conditioning her. Every time she used her quantum interface to defend herself, to monitor us, to build her countermeasures. She was actually helping us map the quantum defense network from the inside, Valdarian finished. Your father's greatest protection became our greatest weapon. The storage room's hidden servers began to smoke as the quantum feedback reached critical levels. Zara's wheelchair, the most advanced quantum computing platform ever built, was being transformed into a conduit for the Shadow Protocol's invasion. You have a choice, Zara, Valdarian offered, genuine respect in his voice. Join us willingly. Help us reshape the global defense landscape, or watch as we use your own quantum connection to tear it all down. Through the haze of pain and failing systems, Zara's tactical display showed a horrifying truth. Military bases were going dark as their quantum-encrypted firewalls collapsed. Emergency systems were activating, but without proper control protocols, they were more dangerous than helpful. You were never the target, she realized, her voice barely a whisper. The art exhibition, the weapons deal, even the quantum cascade, it was all to get me to interface directly with the mainframe. Finally, she understands, Valdarian smiled. Your father built the perfect defense system, but he also built the perfect weakness into it, a father's love for his daughter. He made you the key to everything, thinking he could protect you. Instead, he gave us exactly what we needed. The quantum feedback was reaching levels that threatened to overwhelm not just Zara's systems, but her neural interface as well. The connection that had made her special, that had allowed her to become a quantum guardian, was becoming a direct threat to everything she had sworn to protect. In that moment of darkest despair, as quantum energy threatened to overwhelm both her systems and her mind, Zara remembered something her father had taught her during their very first training session after the accident. The wheelchair isn't your prison, he had said, watching her struggle with the new reality of her life. It's just another tool, and like any tool, its greatest power isn't in what it can do, it's in what people think it can't do. Through the searing pain of the quantum feedback, Zara smiled. You made the same mistake everyone else did, she told Valdarian, her voice growing stronger. You thought the chair was the source of my power. The neural interface is killing you, Valdarian countered, genuine concern in his voice. You can't possibly maintain quantum coherence at these levels. You're right, Zara agreed, surprising him. I can't maintain it, so I'm going to break it. Her hands moved to her chair's primary control panel. But first, let me show you what 3 years of real adaptation looks like. With deliberate precision, she began shutting down her chair's quantum shielding. The Shadow Protocol's feedback loop instantly intensified, pouring more energy into her systems. But instead of fighting it, she opened every channel, every circuit. What are you doing? Thorn demanded, stepping forward. The quantum surge will fry your neural pathways. No, Zara corrected him, her voice steady despite the increasing pain. It's going to fry everything. Her tactical display showed energy levels climbing beyond anything the systems were designed to handle. You said you spent decades studying my father's quantum firewall. But did you ever wonder why he built it here, under a school? Valdarian's triumphant expression faltered as new alarms began blaring throughout the facility. The quantum mainframe's power signature was changing, becoming more erratic, more unstable. The Soviets didn't build this facility, Zara continued. Each word and effort as quantum energy coursed through her neural interface. They found it. The quantum mainframe isn't Cold War tech. It's something much older. something that was sealed away because no one could control it. Understanding dawned in Valdarian's eyes, followed quickly by fear. The geological surveys, the unusual energy patterns in the area. Now you're getting it, Zara managed through gritted teeth. This isn't just a quantum computer, it's a quantum containment system, and you just helped me overload it. The ground beneath the academy began to tremble as decades-old systems activated. But these weren't weapons or defense protocols. They were warning systems designed to activate only in the most extreme circumstances. Every quantum processor in my paintings, Zara explained, her voice growing stronger as she embraced the burning energy flowing through her. Every circuit in my chair, every modification we made to the school's infrastructure, they weren't just for defense, they were preparation for this moment. The quantum containment system beneath Shadowmere Academy awakened fully for the first time in centuries. As energy coursed through ancient circuits, Zara's neural interface transformed from a vulnerability into something unprecedented. You see, she explained to a stunned Valdarian, when you forced quantum feedback through my neural connection, you didn't just overload the system, you completed it. The containment field wasn't designed to prevent access to the quantum mainframe. It was designed to prevent the mainframe from accessing our world until someone could properly interface with it. The storage room's hidden servers began glowing with an otherworldly light as quantum energy patterns shifted into configurations that defied conventional physics. Thorn and the remaining Axiom operators backed away, their weapons useless against what was unfolding. The accident that gave me neural compatibility? Zara continued, her voice resonating with new power. It didn't just prepare me to use quantum systems, it prepared quantum systems to use me. Commander Zara Aethris burst into the room, flanked by special operations teams, but stopped short at what he saw. His daughter's wheelchair had become the center of a quantum manifestation that even his years of research hadn't prepared him for. The Shadow Protocol spent decades trying to breach quantum encryption, Zara said, looking at her father with understanding. But you knew the truth, didn't you, Dad? The real quantum defense system wasn't in the computers or the networks. It was waiting for someone who could bridge the gap between human consciousness and quantum reality. The quantum feedback that had threatened to destroy her neural pathways now flowed through her like a natural extension of her nervous system. Every quantum processor in the building, from her paintings to the ancient mainframe, synchronized with her consciousness. Impossible, Valdarian whispered, watching as his carefully constructed network dissolved. The human mind can't possibly process quantum information at this scale. A normal human mind can't, Zara corrected him. But you gave me 3 years to adapt, 3 years to learn how to think differently, 3 years to evolve. With a thought, she accessed every system the Shadow Protocol had tried to breach. But instead of corrupting them, she began healing them, implementing quantum defense protocols that would take centuries to decrypt. Your weakness, Valdarian realized, your disability. It wasn't a weakness at all. No, Zara agreed. It was the key to everything. When you took away my ability to walk, you forced me to develop new neural pathways. When you isolated me, you gave me time to understand quantum mechanics at a level no one else could. Every challenge you created helped me become exactly what this system needed. The quantum manifestation reached its peak, transforming the entire academy into a nexus of unprecedented defensive power. The Shadow Protocol's network didn't just fail, it was rewritten, converted into the foundation of a new kind of global protection. As federal agents moved in to arrest Valdarian and his accomplices, Zara looked at Thorn, who stood frozen in disbelief. You know what the real evolution was? She asked him. It wasn't learning to fight from a wheelchair or developing quantum neural interfaces. It was understanding that true strength comes from adaptation, not domination. Commander Aethris approached his daughter, pride and concern mingling in his expression. The quantum integration. Is it permanent? Zara smiled, feeling the power of the quantum mainframe flowing through her consciousness. It's more than permanent, Dad. It's just the beginning. The real question is, are the world's defense systems ready for their own evolution? As the sun rose over Ravencliff Harbor, casting golden light through the gallery's windows, Zara Aethris had become more than just a Navy SEAL's daughter who refused to be underestimated. She had become the bridge between humanity and its quantum future, proving that sometimes the greatest strengths come from what others perceive as weaknesses. The wheelchair that had once seemed like a limitation now served as the interface to power beyond imagination. And somewhere in the quantum realm, new possibilities were awakening, ready for a world that had finally evolved enough to embrace them. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.